Okay, it's 2 o'clock and welcome again to our webinar organized by Numlix, how to bring the A back to FP&A with Anaplan. Let me go straight into this question. How often, after making a report in finance, we just don't have time and energy to analyze it? And indeed, according to a recent study of Association for Financial Professionals, it's only 25% of time FP&A teams are actually spending on this A of FP&A. Where all this time then goes, where all this time 75% goes to? Well, on a typical week, usually a very highly educated FP&A professional is occupied with collecting the data and maintaining spreadsheets and maybe developing a little bit some reports, while performing analysis is actually happening on Friday afternoon and sometimes even during the weekend, which it's not a good practice, of course. How do we change that? How do we give our teams more of this precious A time, analysis time? And the answer is very simple. High performing teams already do that, and they do this by connecting people, plans, and data with the help of connected planning platforms like for example, Anaplan, which we're going to present today. My name is Marina Ketelslegers, and I'm going to be your host today. And I will talk about why A-time is so important for your FP&A team. And I will suggest you 6 ways of how to bring it back with connected planning. I will be talking for about, 30, 40 minutes, hopefully. And after that, there will be a Q&A session. So please use the questions window on the panel which you see on your screen, and make sure you don't use this chat window because that's not going to work out. So please use questions window. So let's dig into it. Connected planning is really an important company-wide concept, but frankly speaking, I would be more interested as a FP&A person myself to show you what it means down to earth in our everyday life in finance. So let's take this very simple example. You have a CapEx project where you got some new assumptions on investment dollars and probably also recalculated NPV, which of course would have an impact on your P&L forecast on the revenue and depreciation line. So instead of spending my A time, my quality time on maintaining those spreadsheets which are disconnected, here is me going into the connected planning platform called Anaplan. And I do see here this list of projects. I do see here my investment, which I definitely can change immediately. Like for example, say that this is going to be not 10, but 50K for financial year 20. And I just watch my depreciation line changing. And I also see my capital required being changed. So on the other hand, what I also can do, I can even say, well, I want to change this asset type because it's just a different asset type with different taxable useful life. And I will also see my depreciation being changed, and the balance sheet will be changing also in this background. So just with a simple example, experiencing how much of A time, just imagine doing this all in Excel, how much A time connected planning can save. I personally became very passionate about connected planning. In my own FP&A career, after graduating from this finance university in Moscow, and I love this picture because you can clearly see it's in Russia. It's a lot of snow. I have started my 12 years career at this plant, and these are 6 plants together in one place at a big American multinational called Cargill. And I was always amazed during my career that even at a big company with a lot of resources, we would still use Excel for budgeting, planning, and forecasting until actually a couple of years ago when Cargill has also implemented connected planning and a plan. So it really has become my passion, and that is why I have joined Numlix. Numlex is a company with the idea of spreading this connected planning to all FP&A teams. And this is also my mission. And Numlex is official partner of Anaplan, a connected planning platform you will be seeing today. Numlex is supported by financial professionals of Ufinity, and Ufinity is already for 10 years on the market and places best financial talent to some of your organizations as well. And we are all here supported by Kronos Group, best IT company with best IT resources in Belgium. It exists already for 30 years, so we do have very strong support, which is helping, which is really nice. So that was my story, but what about your story? Now it's your moment to interact. And you will see a poll question now. And the question is, where do you see the biggest opportunity to improve your planning process? And please answer. Please answer. You can choose one of the options. It is implementing rolling forecasts, or maybe making sure entire team is involved, working with one data set, or improving our scenario planning. And I do see rolling forecasts are really popular. It's already 80%, but just continue voting, and I will share you with your percentages in the end. Or maybe you see that your pain point is really relying on Excel, and that's what you need to solve to improve. Or maybe you're struggling with introducing interactive dashboarding, so please let me know. So I can tell you that 75% of you are really seeing the opportunity of improvement in rolling forecasts, in implementing rolling forecasts which work. 63% think that working with one data set would make a huge improvement. 44% really like scenario planning and wants to improve there. 20% wants to stop relying on Excel. Well, I really support all the answers, but actually, if you look into all those points are having impact on your team quality time. So let's start maybe one by one looking into them. Like, let's start with rolling forecasts. If you're staying just with budgets, you spend time of your team looking backwards at old assumptions. And because of just the business case for rolling forecasts can be probably summed up in 2 words. Things change. It's so simple, but we're still doing budgets, comparing them to actuals without looking into rolling forecasts. It's like 50% of companies are still doing that. And FP&A teams, they have to stay on top of assumptions and also stay realistic cycle by cycle, keeping an eye on financial year targets, but not spending a minute on their time on the forecast like this. If you look at this fiscal year cliff, this is what you usually see in organizations. Without rolling forecasts, the organization works towards the end of financial year while business just keeps going. And with rolling forecasts, you can really see it, how every month you bring new assumptions further, one period further. But those who have tried to implement rolling forecasts, I'm sure you know that they're not that easy to implement. They're not that easy to roll. Actually, 50% of companies are saying rolling forecasts are data and modeling heavy. And that's true because every time you kind of create a new data set, and if you try to do this in Excel, I think that at some point you would start questioning, where is this value I'm supposed to get? Where is my time, my quality time, for analysis I'm supposed to get? And at this point, you even might start thinking, I doubt if I need that, so I would come back to budget versus actual. And I'm switching to Anaplan here to show you just this very simple example, how it could look like with connected planning. From this control window here, I see I have actuals until February here, and there is a switchover point to my 12 months long rolling forecast. I can play with this duration and make it not 12 months, for example, but 18 months. And I think 18 months is a really, really good duration because it covers at some point your full financial year. So you can use it as a starting point for your budget. And by doing this, I can see that basically my forecast is now 18 months long. I can also notice that in this window, my rolling forecast duration dates have been changed. So if you just refresh your dashboard, you would see that the graph has been changed as well. So what I want to do here is I want to focus on my February and March forecast and switch my April and May forecast off. For example, I see that those two forecasts are quite close to each other, but there are some differences. So there has been a change into the assumptions. I do want to see what is behind it, what kind of assumptions I've put into those two different cycles. Well, I have modeled it myself, so it can be different, but in this specific example, I'm looking in February at the forecast which is based on growth percentage. So for two different product groups, I'm applying some growth percentage to my historical data so I can just look into seasonality as well, and I can pick up seasonality from previous years. I can also choose not to do this, for example, for March. Yeah, so I would then go into 3 months average. I can immediately watch my graph changing. I can see that my graph has become much more flat because it's just picking up the average. This can be helpful in case you want to see a cleaner forecast without seasonality and just to see the trend if you're going up or down. So in this case, it looks like I'm staying, the same level. And as a sort of a bonus point here, it can be helpful that even with uh, all the beautiful models, we still need to have some human interaction, intervention into this calculation. So I'm looking at this May number, for example, and I see there is a kind of a peak moment, which I might want to correct, might want to change. And I'm going here, for example, for changing this number into 400K. So by doing this, I see this is going a little bit down. Of course, I can play with it much more. And this is going to be available to your whole organization. So all departments, if you want them to see it, will be able to see this final forecast and just start working with it. Point number 2. It's really difficult to overemphasize how important is that to involve your entire team into planning process. And how important is that? And I'm switching to point 3 immediately because I'm going to talk about them together. How important is that everybody in the team works with the same data set? If I'm going back to this poll question, 63% of you think that you can improve by using one data set. And this is very much fair point. Because actually what you want to have is to save, again, more time for your FP&A team without making sure that people get different versions of spreadsheets, that people just have access to this one data set. In fact, it's like actually making sure that entire organization is singing one planning song. I like very much this picture because it shows that we are all singing one planning song. But of course, we need to make sure that everybody knows its part, because otherwise it's going to be, I don't think it will be a very pleasant song. I don't think it's going to work out. So let me show you just a very short example how those roles, those parts in the song can be managed in Anaplan. Because it's really an essential part, right? You can give access to everybody, but that's not the point. With Anaplan, you can really see which, for example, cost center manager, which parts in the process he or she should play, and business unit manager and global department manager and FP&A, which roles are they playing? you can also specify that with applying, read, write, or non-access to specific parts of your data set. And of course, if you, for example, say, I want to make sure that when my CFO opens the Anaplan, because it's a sort of web-based application, you just get a link and you open it, that they see what I want them to see, right? So they see the part of data set I have specified, and you as FP&A have specified that CFO would see CFO dashboard, and then cost center managers, cost center manager dashboard. So it's also a way to kind of manage this access to specific part of your data set while still working with the same data. And this brings us to point number 4. 44% of you sees improvement in scenario planning, and I think that's one of the key roles of FP&A teams nowadays is about scanning this environment of risks and opportunities and quickly anticipating this financial impact which will it have to your organization. And this financial impact also should be seen through building scenarios. In fact, this is where this A time should go to, A of FP&A. Well, simply because future doesn't look like present, right? So, and here is this quote of Shell, former head of planning, saying that scenario planning and implementing of scenario, they are actually, the founders of scenario planning. They have started this many years ago, and were like pioneers in that. And they said, and they said it has helped to break this habit ingrained in most corporate planning of assuming that the future will look like much like the present, because it will not, right? So it will not. So if the scenario planning, I think at Shell Times, they have started also with very high level, best, worst, and expected case, and that would do the thing, that would just do it, in the past. But currently, we are looking into more multidimensional and real-time scenarios, which will help FP&A team actually to do their job. Scenario analysis is part of FP&A job description, right? And I think you would agree with me that I think that's also one of the places where we may be not delivering as we could to the management. Looking into all these opportunities is just data heavy. Just making all those versions and making all those scenarios has to become easier for us, for FP&A team to perform this analysis job. So let me again show you an example how it can be done. And this example is also going to be in connected planning platform called Anaplan. So you can see here, I'm working on scenario planning, and I'm targeting several FP&A metrics. So I'm looking at revenue, I'm looking at earnings, I'm looking at CapEx, I'm looking at NPV. I can switch on and switch off some of them so that I will be, having a more focused view. And you can see already, I have two scenarios. So I have like base scenario and I have the competitor response scenario. But I really want to go for more. So I would go then into my model settings, into versions of my model settings, and I will create a new version. And guess what? I will I will create this very nice version called the impact of what is going on right now. Sorry, impact with B. And I will click OK. I will put it also at the end. OK. So now you can see I have created this new version, but at this moment there is no data in it. It's just a new name. So I would like to make sure I have some starting point for my scenario analysis. So I will create a bulk copy of data and I can choose from which other scenario, other version I could copy from. So I can say this is base, for example, and I'm copying this into my impact of coronavirus situation. So those two scenarios are going to be copied, and it's actually happened very, very quickly. So now what I need to do, I just need to go to my dashboard and I need to refresh it, right? So when I do this, I immediately have as a starting point the same as base. I have this new scenario added. So now is the point of deciding which factors will be playing in every scenario. And that's what we call scenario assumptions. And here, for example, if you look into this case, we're just talking about which projects we're going to start or stop in every scenario. So for base, I already have a set of projects. For competitor response scenario, I'm going to make sure I just have some of them. And for coronavirus, I will be then, stopping number of those projects, so I can see this is happening, in my FP&A metrics have been changing immediately online. I can see also the comparison, and also I can make this available to the other teams from my organization. I can make this available to management. I can fix some of this, or I can let them create another scenario with their own assumptions, for example, and then we can just discuss and sit together and have then some kind of consensus on that. So there are so many possibilities. What kind of factors could be playing? Of course, it cannot be much more than projects. It can be whatever metric you would like to model into your financial model, right? Because there is a financial model behind all those calculations. And this model is owned by FP&A people. This model is owned by finance. So you can make changes or additions when you want this, right? Now imagine going to Excel and doing all that. And here is I'm coming to my fifth point, and I have seen a number of people also answering that this is really a pain point. And it has been a pain point for me. You have heard my story, so using Excel felt always like it gives you flexibility, of course, but it's a huge payment for that flexibility. And I'm here, from my experience, also never saying stop using Excel. It's more like use Excel as your sandbox. And I think it's great just to sketch some models to see how calculations are going through. It's great for some really, really ad hoc analysis, something which is just once ever done and then done never, and also not data heavy. We have to continue using Excel for those things. But on the other hand, uh, it's about stopping relying on Excel for your critical process. And if you think about your critical process, those FP&A processes like forecasting, capex planning, and strategic planning are critical processes. So for some reason, we have moved a lot of things into like legacy systems, but these processes are still in Excel. So how can it be? I guess you would agree with that those are critical processes. So in Excel, it can really fall apart at some point. Now, how do you report to the world, right? So how do you report to this, to your management? How do you report to other teams? How do you communicate with them? It's not with models, right? So it's with some dashboards, with some storytelling. And how much more opportunity for a team and FP&A for a time in FP&A is there with interactive dashboarding? I think it's quite a lot, because we're not talking about this one-way reporting interaction, but about this ability to trigger recalculations also in real time. Well, for me, that's what I really like as a FP&A person, comparing to other tools, other BI tools, like for example, the tools where you just can filter the report. It's also type of interaction, but I do love the fact that I can interact with calculations as well. And I have shown you already a number of examples of that. And I just want to share with you another one. I'm sure you will relate to that. So here what I have is some financial consolidation, so a consolidated income statement and a financial outlook. I'm looking at this kind of report, which is quite detailed and complicated in terms of I'm showing here period, actual, and budget. I'm also calculating some metrics. I'm looking at year to dates. I'm looking at the differences. In the end, I'm looking at the forecast, of course, till the end of the year. And here, I do see my numbers, and I would like to see, for example, what is going to happen if my sales are going to be 5% higher. So this adjusted forecast has been already depicted on this waterfall chart, and it's nice that I can go and filter it by region or by product group, but that I can interfere with, for example, looking into this percentages of changes also for other lines. That makes those interactive dashboarding really value added. So step by step, by implementing all those points and going for this in connected planning, you will notice that your team will get more A time, more A quality time. And I will give you another bonus here, and I'm sure you will give me much more bonuses with another examples. Like, think about automating your cost allocations. Think about automating your reconciliation process. And any other complex calculation which is now happening in one Excel spreadsheet or in several spreadsheets, which are then updated one after another, or a calculation which is using different data sources where you need to download first from one data source, then from the other one, then VLOOKUP and SUMIF and COUNTIF from all those sources into Excel, and then basically only after that you can start any kind of analysis. So all this is about removing this consolidation part and bringing A time back. So all this can be with connected planning automated. And well, interestingly enough, it also has a tendency to increase FP&A teams' engagement, because I've never seen an FP&A person in my life saying, well, I love those spreadsheets, and because of that, I see my future in this company. That never happens, right? So your team is really, that's where your teams are struggling. That's where I was struggling as well. And what your team wants is having their week full of those value added activities and interaction with stakeholders, with decision makers. And if you remember our previous slide on that, how it's going on now, that we just sometimes we even don't have any moment to interact with decision makers. What I would usually say is that, we have closed this month. We don't understand this difference, so we will work on it through the months, and we'll come back to you with the answer, right? So this is something what it means I didn't have enough time to look into analysis. I just didn't have my A quality time. Am I happy about that as FP&A? No, not at all, because that's actually core, this business partnership. That's core of FP&A role. Of course, connected planning is more than FP&A. And finance has always been a center of changes in terms of IT related changes in organization, because it just brings all together. It just grows from one solution and scales into more connections. For example, how can you do your planning without HR supplying your data? So HR would also love to be, with their planning, workforce planning on this platform. And supply chain will want to be there for sure because all the inputs, all the volumes, capacity planning, it will be coming from there. And of course, sales, because part of what I have been showing, for example, revenue forecasting would also be coming with input from sales teams. So the scalability of the platform, like Anaplan, is huge, right? So, but you don't have to, implement everything from the beginning. It just how it's going to evolve to get the most value out of it. So now that you know more about connected planning and you have seen the power of Anaplan, I'm curious, what are the other topics you would be interested to learn about? And now you will see the second poll, and there are some suggested options there, like for example, driver-based performance analysis. I think it's a huge thing for FP&A because that's where basically all these models are coming from. If you're forecasting in the future, you have to understand the drivers very well, and because change in the drivers is going to be, you can easier communicate with management, saying that because of that there is a change in my scenario because of this specific driver. Cost allocations, these are just, sometimes huge amount of time is going into allocating within one company of functional costs into the business units, for example. That's where the change can come to your team, where you just press one button. Oh wow, that's allocated. Well, if I need to correct a little bit, I can correct as well. But initial calculation is done in minutes. So there is also definitely supply chain connection. And I just, by the way, wanted to share with you that there is this the one of the points here is 3 touch points between FP&A and supply chain planning. So if you feel like your organization really misses this connection between supply chain and finance, it's your pain point, and I would propose you just keep an eye on this webinar we are doing with our co-partner. It's an international expert in supply chain planning, but actually Belgian company called Blue Crooks. So they do have a lot of experience in supply chain planning. Webinar is coming in May. So this is great. So I think I see the answers. So 60% on driver base, 60% on cost allocations, 27% on supply chain, and there is also 33% for FP&A process quick scan, right? So to see where the opportunities are, it's also very important to have this first point where to start, because you really want to start where the pain point is, where you can make a difference. But of course, with the whole picture in mind. And at Numlix, this is what we do as well. So we do this quick scan, and then we basically help you to implement this initial model, and then initial model, if it's done right, then I think it's basically on your team further to maintain that. And before we're going into this Q&A session, I just wanted to leave you with this idea of connection between the amount of time and engagement of your team, especially of this younger generation of people in your team. We notice teams usually like Anaplan because they can own it. And this is what I just said. So we help you build this initial model, but then after that, you own it, right? So you basically gain, your team can gain a Respect Model Builder certification, which is very easy to do on of those courses on Anaplan Academy. So it's on-demand courses. And your team can also become part of Anaplan community with already more than 30,000 users. You can go and check it right now. What is this community? I think it's open for everybody. Here, if you involve your key users, which are today, for example, ERP key users or other applications key users, Excel power users, you know these people. We have it in every finance team. Those people who are passionate about data, about Excel, about analysis, these people would thrive in the Anaplan Learning Center and community, because they will also be able to kind of put their creativity into action. And we do see this happening all the time. Teams advocate for Anaplan because they enjoy this modeling freedom and also data security at the same time, right? Which it gives. And I think that that's everything you need if you want to really become a sophisticated model builder. Teams like that, and I think at this point, on this note, we are ready for a Q&A section, and I will ask my colleague Sophie to read your questions.
Yeah, so we have a couple of questions that have come through. So the first one is, how does Anaplan connect to our ERP and other legacy systems which we currently have?
So Anaplan is really the tool which has two ways connection. So first, you can get data from your ERP systems, and Anaplan is working with the biggest ERP providers like Oracle and SAP, where you do have connection easily done between those ERP systems and Anaplan. But also there is a connection back which you sometimes need to do, and this is what also Anaplan can provide. So if you, for example, from Anaplan would need to enter your data into some bigger data lake or into some other systems which you have, sometimes there are BI reporting tools which are kind of gathering data from everywhere, and that's where Anaplan also can play a role, connecting the data in Anaplan into your Power BI, for example, or Tableau tools.
Thank you. So the other question that we've had come through is, Anaplan is in the cloud. How secure is it that as we have to store personal information in our records?
Well, that's a really good question, because I know where it's coming from. It's the, if you would ask me, 5-6 years ago, there is an application in the cloud, and how would I feel about it? I would feel a little bit, cautious, okay, because how I'm going, where is the cloud, where is that? So it felt a bit insecure, but things have changed dramatically, and Anaplan has been going through a number of checks and scrutiny on how their cloud is protected and how secure it is, how difficult it is to get access, unwanted access to the data of companies which are using Anaplan. And Anaplan is already working with the biggest companies, different businesses, which for sure use a lot of personal data as well. And for example, for workforce planning, I think it's really a key here, and also for sales, of course, as well. So all the checks which have been asked by IT departments have always been going to one conclusion, that Anaplan is secure and safe in terms of the fact that it's in the cloud. It's fast, but at the same time, it's safe.
Okay, another question that we've had is, how easy is it to customize Anaplan to our own environment? Can we do that ourselves, or do we need full external support from you?
Well, it's initially, if you look at how Anaplan is done, right? So you can start from really blank, from scratch, right? So you can start from, let's say, like in Excel, you just open it and it's empty. You can do whatever. You can do whatever in it. So in Anaplan, that's, I think, the same thing. You can customize the process you want using different sort of user interface tools which are available and easy to understand for people without programming background. Initial model setup can be tricky if you have never done that. That is why Anaplan is working with partners like Numlix, who have experience in both business processes, so we can talk your language and understand really details of the business process and the reasons why it goes like that. But also, okay, suggest some improvements if this is something what you really want to do. But also have the certifications in Anaplan model building and support of Anaplan organization. So that's really how we work with customers, is that there is an initial model setup. It's a project which is done with number of sprints, and there is a methodology which we use. It's called the Anaplan way. So it's very agile methodology where you see the results very fast, and you can also play a role in immediate changes in the tool and the modeling. And after that, when the tool is handed over to your team, we make sure that your team is ready for supporting the tool, which has been built, but also developing it. Because when, especially your team members have gone through the implementation together with us, they would have already much more knowledge on Anaplan, but also we ask, we recommend that it's really important that you will also find key users in your team who will go through the training and who will make sure that they are able to support the model and also adjust it further. So this is how it works. Initial setup and then further adjustments and improvements are done by your team.
Another question has come through. Can you provide examples from large and complex companies using Anaplan?
Yeah, so well, if you look at, I think here that will be great to connect to our Anaplan colleague. I think he's on the call. Mario, he can provide lots of examples, but we're basically see that Anaplan is cross-industry, so it's presented in every industry. So the company I have been working with in implementing Anaplan is called Cargill, and Cargill is specifically in food business, but it has all different types of other, diversified business models, which are also, animal nutrition, but also trading and risk analysis, but also transportation, for example, and also agricultural supply chain. So if you look at all these complexities which have been implemented within one model at the corporate level, then I think this is already a good example. But I will just ask a little bit of help of my colleague Mario on the call.
Good
Thank
afternoon,
you.
everybody. My name is Mario. I'm with Anaplan Benelux. Just to fill you in here, please do feel free to go to our website, anaplan.com/customers. There are numerous customer testimonials there. Just to name a few in our region, you could go AB InBev as one of the bigger organizations. Atlas Copco is using Anaplan. The Dutch Railways are using Anaplan. Booking.com is using Anaplan. So it really ranges from really big multinationals with who have a big geographical spread all over the world, up to companies that are more local within Europe, for instance. And it ranges, it goes across all of the vertical markets, if I may say so, because planning is in all companies. It's a necessity. So I would urge you to go to our website. I think we have over 1,000 customers since 2011, ranging in all kinds of markets, and be it supply chain, be it in finance, be it in marketing, be it in sales performance management.
Thanks, Mario.
Okay, no
Sophie,
problem.
do we have more questions?
No, those are all the questions from the audience today.
Okay, so well, thank you very much then for your questions. And if you have any other questions, of course, feel free to reach us. It has been a pleasure for me today to be your host, and we hope you will be able to bring some inspiration back to your teams. If you would like to keep in touch, we're having more questions, you will get our contact details of Numelyx and Ufinity and Anaplan. You will get them in the thank you email after this webinar, together with recording, I guess. And we wish you a really good afternoon and beautiful evening today. Please be safe and try staying at home if it's possible for you. And we hope to see you next time.